he's going to be doing his speech on dynamic leadership, level 4. The project is change management, and I believe his speech title is What's Going? So please give a warm Toastmaster welcome to Timothy Thompson-Cook. Take it away, Timothy.
Woo! Thank you for that introduction. So, and I have to bring the energy up for my speech. It wasn't supposed to be this energetic, but it is going to be this energetic. First and foremost, babies being born in the lobbies and parking lots, patients falling on their way to their appointments to and from, and double-digit patient no-show rates in our clinics. What the heck is going on? This is the result of a 40-plus year of ignoring a problem and promising us to deliver on a parking structure that never arrived. We need an access to parking solution for all. This is our story. Significant change must begin with review of compelling data and understanding your circumstances. As I just said, babies being born in parking lots, I didn't sign up for this. No-show rates, ridiculous, double digit. What's going on with our patient care? We had to fix this problem. So I committed with my team to taking on this change. And one of the things we had to do to begin with was to make sure we started off by engaging our stakeholders. We had to identify who they were, and then we also had to conduct all types of initial analysis before we jump into this change. We knew we wanted it to change, we just didn't know how we were going to do it. So in identifying the stakeholders to address this 40-plus year problem, we had focus groups, we had surveys, and I committed actually to doing quarterly surveys to make sure that the people involved in this process were connected the entire time. Change management requires this. So what were my objectives? My objectives were pretty simple. No more babies being born in parking lots and in our lobbies or anywhere off the labor and delivery unit. Also, I had to make sure that we didn't have patients falling to and from their appointments to their doctor's offices. And then lastly, ultimately connects directly to patient outcomes, we had a ridiculous no-show rate. So we had to get those no-show rates down to single digits, low single digits at that, all within 1 year. So how did we go about this? Well, first and foremost, we started with a pilot project. Now, if you're listening and you can hear me, pilot projects is a code word for change. It's gonna happen, but they call it a pilot because it lowers anxiety. Hint, hint. So we had pilots that built upon pilots that built upon pilots, which led to permanent change. If everything went well, which it did, we were able to move into our valet parking phase or pilot project. This pilot project involved the stakeholders getting involved, but before we could move forward, you know what this means? We had to figure out how much was this going to cost, and we had to make sure that we presented it in a way to the CFO so we could secure that funding. Because after all, there's no telling when this parking structure is coming. Obviously, it hadn't arrived in 40 years. So we put this together, and it might again sound simple, but it wasn't. 6 a.m. in the morning, me and my team are outside making sure that the staff, who had already been used to parking wherever they want, which was right next to the buildings in the patient parking lots for 40 plus years, and the closed parking circle due to 9/11 concerns. When was 9/11? 15 plus years ago. What? Okay, change has to happen. Once we put the valet parking in, we had to have overall ongoing transparent communication. So we built an intranet site for staff to be able to put their comments on and stay engaged throughout the process. As they gave us these feedback, we often made edits to our projects or our pilots and improved them along the way. This was free feedback. So my job at that point became to continue to put out a message of all the positives that were happening. Once we opened the circle, how many patients were we seeing? How were our patient no-show rates responding? And also how many patients were delivering their babies in the parking lots or in our lobbies? All that stuff started to go down over the short amount of time that we had implemented our project. Now, guess what? If you're planning on implementing any changes, you need to know that doesn't always run smoothly. Change management, you have to be thinking about the resistors as well as those folks out there to just tear down your project before you build it. So I had, as I said, met with the labor unions to get ahead of this. There were going to be grievances, complaints about me not being able to park illegally in the patient parking spots. Yeah, so I involved labor unions as well. And then the next thing I did was keep these folks in the loop. All the stakeholders always knew what was going on, so they started to feel like this change was happening with them and not to them. Something else to keep in mind when you're making changes. So my funny stories I have to share with you guys. It wasn't a smooth ride the entire time. On one occasion, a patient who had recently been discharged decided to go through the parking lot, the valet parking lot, told the young man, "That's my car, but I don't have my ticket." He was unaware that that patient had just been discharged from our mental health unit. And he gave them the keys. And they always drove off with that car. Fortunately, they realized their error, stopped them from driving off, stopped that car from leaving. And there was another incident where a staff member came in the self-parking area and parked so close to their co-worker's car, they crashed into it literally. Well, the valet attendant saw this happen, stopped them from driving off and parking someplace else like they weren't involved. And then the third issue that we had going on was we had a patient who actually was living in her car in our parking lot. So these kinds of things were happening. So I had to keep communicating in advance, always what was happening, staying transparent, and that's what we were able to do to make sure these projects were successful. Last thing I'll say is I'm running short on time. I want to make sure that if you're going to engage in implementing any change, you have to make sure that you do these projects with the people and not to the people. Mr. Toastmaster, thank you for your time.